So I'm going to read you the story. We're going to look at some questions to see, just so you can ask yourself and check and see if you're listening okay, like, and if you're understanding. And then we're going to talk about what was said by reading it again. So for right now, you just need to listen to the story. My name is Anthony. I live in California. My sister lives 10 minutes away from my house. She used to live in Texas. She moved to be closer to me. She has 4 children. She is going to have another one. Next week, she is going to the hospital to give birth. I am going to take work off to watch my nieces and nephews. I am excited to help my sister. Okay, so what do you remember? I'm going to ask you these questions so you can pause the video and think about them and try and answer them. But if you don't know the answers, that's okay. We're going to go over them. So the first question is, what is happening? What is happening in the story? Where did Anthony's sister live before? Is Anthony going to help his sister? Does Anthony only have nephews? So those are the questions. Pause this video if you need to think about it a little bit more, but if not, we're going to go over that. So this is the story that I read, but it's written out so we can read it together so you can see the words. So my name is Anthony and I live in California. My sister lives 10 minutes away from my house. She used to live in Texas. She moved to be closer to me. She has 4 children. She is going to have another one. Next week, she is going to the hospital to give birth. I am going to take work off to watch my nieces and nephews. I am excited to help my sister. So I'll go over some of the stuff in these sentences. So first, nieces and nephews. Nieces are when your sister or your brother, or if your sibling has children. Nieces is what people in English call their children's or their sister or brother's children that are girls. That's what nieces mean. Nephews. Nephew is the word that we use to call our sister or brother's sons. So it's the children of your sister or your brother, any of your siblings. And if they're a girl, you call them nieces, and if they're boys, you call them nephews. So that's what those mean. And then you'll notice that in this, we have a lot of examples from some of the stuff that we've learned so far, right? So we know how to say used to live, and as past tense. So she used to live, past tense, in Texas. She moved to be closer to me. She has 4 children. She is going to have. So we learned this one, right? When you say she is going to, and then you have the simple form of a verb, that means it's future tense. It means we're talking about the future. So in the future, she's going to have another one. Next week, she is going to the hospital to give birth. Now, if we look at this sentence, she is going to the hospital. It's different from this sentence, right? Because in this sentence, it says she is going to have it has a verb that's in simple present tense, right? So even though this is present tense, the going to tells us that it's the future, right? But this sentence, she is going to the hospital, this is a noun. This is a person or a place, right? A hospital is a place. It's not a verb, it's not an action. So that's why this sentence, when you see going, this is just the progressive, the progressive verb or the continuous verb, right? It means in the present and it keeps going on into the future. So it's happening right now, but it's going to keep happening because we're planning on it, if that makes sense. So next week she is going. So even though this part of the sentence is telling us that it's the future next week, it's saying that this is planned, so this will turn into the present. She is going to the hospital to give birth. So that's why this going to isn't the same as this going to. And then this sentence right here, I am going to take work off. This is future tense, like this sentence right here, right? Because it's I am going to, and then it says take, which is a verb, right? So just some of the stuff that we've learned so far. So we're going to talk about this. So what is happening? So we know, we're going to go back and look at the story. My name is Anthony and I live in California. My sister lives 10 minutes away from my house. So this is talking about his sister. But what is happening is she is going to have a baby, right? Because it says she has 4 children. She is going to have another one. So that means she's going to have a baby. And Anthony is going to help her by watching his nieces and nephews. So that's what's happening. Where did Anthony's sister live before? So we're going to look back and try and find where it's talking about live. So we see the word live here, but this is talking about Anthony. My name is Anthony and I live in California. So this is him, but it says my sister lives 10 minutes away from my house. So she lives in California too. But the question is asking, where did Anthony's sister live before? Before is in the past. So this sentence, my sister lives, is in the present. So this is where she lives now, is by her brother Anthony. But she used to, past tense, live in Texas. So she used to live in Texas. Is Anthony going to help his sister? And this one, we know the answer is yes, because he is going to take work off to watch his nieces and nephews. Does Anthony only have nephews? So we're going to look for the word nephews in here, and it says it right here. So let's read the sentence that has the word nephews in it. I am going to take work off to watch my nieces and nephews. So it said nieces and nephews. So he doesn't only have nephews. Only means there isn't anybody else except nephews. So his sister only has children that are boys. And because it said nieces and nephews, we know that he has nieces as well as nephews. So that's why the answer is no. Anthony does not only have nephews, he has nieces and nephews. So I am going to read the next story. Carol moved to Salt Lake City last week. She moved because she got a new job. She is staying at a hotel until she finds a place to live. She found an apartment on 700 East that is very nice. The rent is $1,200 a month. She found another apartment on 1,300 East. The rent is $1,600 a month. It is more expensive, but it is closer to her work. What apartment do you think is best? So, what do you remember from what I just said? Why did Carol move? Has she found an apartment? Which apartment is more expensive? Which apartment do you think is the best choice? So here is what I just said, and we're going to read it together. Carol moved to Salt Lake City last week. She moved because she got a new job. She is staying at a hotel until she finds a place to live. She found an apartment on 700 East. That is very nice. The rent is $1,200 a month. She found another apartment on 1,300 East. The rent is $1,600 a month. It is more expensive, but it is closer to her work. What apartment do you think is best? So, really quickly, I said some of these things the proper way that you're supposed to say things in English, like 700 East and 1,300 East. But in Utah, I don't know if this is the same in other places that have a lot of streets that are numbers. But in Utah, people don't say 700 East. Sometimes they say 7th East. So even though this number says 700, it has 2 zeros, people call it 7th, like it's just the 7. So they'll say 7th East, and that's what they mean. So you'll hear that a lot. A lot of English speakers in Utah will say 7th East, and they mean 700 East. But if you said 700 East, people will know what you're talking about. They won't be confused. But for some reason in Utah, people say 7th East. I guess because it's shorter to say. And then with this street, 1,300. So even though this is 1,300, that's the number, people say 13th. So they get rid of the zeros, they pretend like the zeros aren't there, and they just think of it as 13. So they say 13th East. So if you hear somebody say 7th East or 13th East or 8th East, that they're just talking about the streets that are like 7th East is 700 East and 13th East is 1,300 East. So that will help you because sometimes people will give directions and they mean 1,300 East, but they'll say 13th. And so you'll be looking for a street that's just 13, not 1300. So that's what a lot of people say here. The other thing is, in English, even though this number is 1,200, people shorten it in English and they say 1,200. So even though 1,200 doesn't really make sense if you learned how to count numbers in English, 1,200 doesn't make sense. But when somebody says 1,200 or 1,600 or 1,700, it just means that it's 1,000, and then if it's 12, then it's 1,200 a month. So it doesn't mean that it's 12,000. You'll say 1,200, and that lets people know that it's 1,000 and some other numbers. So it's confusing, but it's something that people do in English. The questions that we have for this one is, why did Carol move? So we know that Carol moved to Salt Lake City last week. So she already moved. It's past tense. She moved because she got a new job. So she moved to Salt Lake because she got a new job. Has she found an apartment? So we know that she has not found a new apartment. So the answer to that question would be no, she has not found an apartment. Which apartment is more expensive? So this one is, you're just going to look at each apartment and then the numbers. So I know that you all understand numbers really well. So the first apartment we'll just say is the one that's on 700 East or 7th East. And that one is $1,200 a month or $1,200 a month. So the other apartment is on 13th East and the rent is $1,600 a month or $1,600 a month. So which one is more expensive? The one on 13th East or 1,300 East is more expensive. So we know that the second apartment that she talked about, the one that was on 13th East or 1,300 East, is more expensive. It's $1,600 or $1,600 a month. Which apartment do you think is the best choice? So this question, I'm just asking you. So you just want to think about which one would you choose, or which one do you think is best for Carol? Because the one that is $1,200 a month is very nice, the one that's on 7th East. But the one that's more expensive is the one that's closer to work. So it really is just depends on what you think should happen. So when you're answering this question, just try and out loud say, which apartment do you think would be the best choice if you were talking to Carol and she asked you, which apartment should I choose? Which one do you think is best? And so just practice figuring out what you would say, what advice you would give. So we're going to do another story. So this one is about being stressed. I am going to move out of my parents' house next month. I don't make very much money, but I saved for the security deposit. I was going to pay the security deposit, but then my car broke down. I paid to fix it. Now I do not have the money for the security deposit. I don't know what to do. I am stressed. So, I didn't change the questions for these. So, let's go ahead and read what it says. I am going to, okay, so this one's about being stressed. First, we'll start there. So, when somebody in English says the word stressed, so it comes from the verb stress. So stress is when you feel nervous and you feel worried, and it's when you can't relax. That's what stressed is. I know everybody's been, stressed before. And so people will say, I am stressed. And that just means that it doesn't mean past tense, even though it has an ed on it. This is the past tense of stress. So stress is the present, stressed is the past tense. But when somebody says, I am stressed, it doesn't really mean that they aren't stressed anymore. It doesn't mean that they don't feel stress anymore. It just means that that's something that they're feeling. In English, even though it's not the correct way to say it grammatically, when somebody says, I am stressed, it just means that right now, in the moment, they are stressed instead of, I am, stress. So that's why, in case that's confusing, when you hear people say this. So it says, I am going to move out of my parents' house next month. I don't make very much money, but I saved for the security deposit. I was going to pay the security deposit, but then my car broke down. I paid to fix it. Now I do not have the money for the security deposit. I don't know what to do. I am stressed. So let's talk about this for a little bit. So you'll see that a lot of this story has some of the stuff we've learned, like I am going to move, right? I am going to move is future tense. So this person is planning on moving. They don't make very much money, but meaning even though they don't make a lot of money, they were able to save for the security deposit. So a security deposit. A security deposit is when you are going to buy an apartment or you're going to rent an apartment, and it's just something that you pay to your landlord or your landlady. You pay them, it's usually first month's rent and last month's rent. So it's kind of expensive to pay a security deposit. But yeah, so it's this is the security deposit, is just the money that you pay up front before you move in to let them to let you move in. And sometimes if you pay a security deposit and then you decide not to live there, you can't get the security deposit back. This person was going to pay the security deposit, but then their car broke down. So they paid to fix it. Paid is the past tense of pay. I paid to fix it. Now I do not have the money for the security deposit. I don't know what to do. So you'll see that there are lots of contractions in here. So don't is right here, don't is right here too. And this one is do not, right? Do not and don't are the same thing. And then, oh look, we have another future tense right here. I was going to pay the security deposit, but then my car broke down. So she was planning, or he was planning to pay the security deposit, right? Because this is the future tense. They were planning on it, but then their car broke down. So that's the end of that story. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to read something that I got off of Smith's, which is the food store. I don't know if any of you have been to that grocery store, but it's just a grocery store. And I thought that we could look at just some stuff that they have on their website to help you get better at reading kind of official stuff. That official just means like stuff that the government writes or things that stores write. And the reason they're hard to read if you're learning English is because they use very different vocabulary words. Even though they could say it very simply, they're very particular about what they say because they want people to understand exactly what it is that they're talking about. So that's why it's hard to understand stuff that the government writes or things that are at stores, stuff like that. So what we're going to read is the return policy. Now, a return policy, return means to go back, right? Or to give back. Policy is, it's like a plan. It's a plan that somebody or a business has or a hospital has. A policy is, it's like a rule. It's the rules. That's what a policy is they are rules. So this says return policy update. So update means it's new. It's been changed. That's really what an update means. It means that something was changed recently, or yeah. So it's return policy is something that's changed or new. So the return policy, the rules for returning stuff have changed. That's what it means. Due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, we are temporarily suspending product returns on food products, cosmetic and apparel, clothing, shoes, and accessories. If any fresh produce, meat, seafood, or deli product does not meet our freshness standards, we will continue to replace it or issue a refund. Okay, so let's talk about this. So whenever something says due to, due can mean lots of stuff. So due can mean, like somebody said, your rent is due. That means you need to give it, right? You need to give the rent or pay the rent. That's what it's due. Due means there. Due just means because. Because of the current COVID-19 pandemic, we are temporarily. Temporarily means this isn't going to be the policy all the time. It doesn't mean that they're getting rid of the return policy. It means that, temporarily just means for right now. It's not going to be forever. And it's not going to be always. Suspending. Suspending means in English to keep still, or but in this case, when it says we are temporarily, sorry, I had trouble pronouncing that. We are temporarily suspending. Suspending just means they're not doing it. It means that you cannot return products, meaning if you buy something, you can't take it back for a refund, and a refund just means it's money that you get back, right? So if you pay for something and you want to give it back to the store because you don't want it anymore, you don't like it, that's they'll give you a refund. It means they give the money back that you used to pay for it. So we are temporarily suspending product returns on food products, cosmetics, and apparel. So just for right now, they're not having any product returns. You can't give products back. And it says on food products, products is what you buy at the store, right? Or it's something that's sold. That's what a product is. Or it's something that you make. It's a product. So food products, cosmetic, and apparel. Cosmetic means like makeup, or usually it's like shampoos and conditioners, like stuff that you use for hygiene, or hygiene just means cleaning yourself and taking care of yourself, and apparel. And in parentheses right here, you'll see that it says clothing, shoes, and accessories. So that means apparel is, it means clothing, shoes, and accessories. Apparel is what you wear. That's what that means in English. And you'll see in this part right here, you'll see that the words are slanted, and you'll see this little symbol right here, which we learned is called an asterisk. And remember that this is when you see this little symbol, it means that whatever is next to it is important to read. So this says if any fresh produce, produce is like vegetables, things that grow and can go bad really quickly. So like carrots and potatoes and lettuce and corn and zucchini, that kind of stuff, all of that's produce. Meat, seafood, or deli product. Seafood is like fish, crabs, clams. That's what seafood is. It sounds just like what the word says. It's food that's from the sea, meaning the ocean. And deli. Deli products are like cut meats, cold meats like ham or turkey that you put in sandwiches, and the cheese for sandwiches. So it's usually meat and cheeses that have been prepared for eating, like for making sandwiches and stuff. So it says, if any fresh produce, meat, seafood, or deli product does not meet our freshness standards. So you'll see that this word meat and this word meat mean the same thing. Or they sound the same. They don't mean the same thing. They sound the same, but they're spelled differently. Meat and meat. This meat is talking about food meat, right? Like ham, beef, turkey, that kind of stuff. That's meat. This kind of meat is like you could say, I'm going to meet my friends. It means that you're going to come together, or you're going to go and you're going to see each other. In this case, sorry, I had a little yawn. In this case, does not meet means it does not, it's not, I'm trying to think of a good way to describe this. It means that it doesn't, their freshness standards, it means it's also like the rules that they set. Like in the United States, if you, stores cannot sell food that is expired. So the little dates that are on, the little numbers that are on your food that are stamped on there to tell you when it's good to eat and when it's bad, like when it's gone bad, a store can't sell it after that. And so if you accidentally, because the employee missed it, and you accidentally get something that has gone bad or the expiration date has passed, then it means that their freshness standard is to not sell people bad food. That's what that is. And so that's why we will continue to replace it or issue a refund. We're going to learn this next week. Will is a word that we use when we talk about the future. So it's saying that if this does happen to you, they will, in the future, they are going to give you a refund. So, or replace it. So this says continue, that they continue means keep doing. We will continue to replace it or issue a refund. So replace means to get a new one, or it means to put something in its place, to replace it. It means to put something else in its place. So you can replace your shoes. You can replace a light bulb. It's something that you're putting, a new thing that you're putting in the place of the old thing. That's what replace means. And issue can mean a couple things in English. Issue can be, I am having an issue. It means you're having a problem. Or issue could be like a magazine, an issue of a magazine. It means the new magazine. Or issue means to give. They can issue a refund, meaning they will give you your money back. That's what that means. Issue a refund is giving you your money back. So that's it for today. Let me know if you have any questions.